mean tease by me there, wasn't it? Right before I opened the mic saying, hey, I got something else for you today.
There you go.
Didn't tell you what it was. State Representative Jim Struzzi with us this morning. Our conversation is brought to you by Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. So big doings in Harrisburg this week. And Reggie came to the forefront again and in a major way.
Well, it certainly did, Todd. I mean, this battle has been ongoing for 2.5 years now. Last week, as we talked about on Friday, my bill ran out of the House. Senator Pittman's bill ran on second. My bill, as amended, creates the Energy Sustainability and Investment Act. On Monday, the Senate tried to veto override, which failed, unfortunately. But, a couple of good news items related to Reggie with the Homer City generating plant announcing that they're going to continue operations, which I think is great news for us and really highlights the fact that we do need a balanced energy portfolio in this country. And then with the Commonwealth Court deciding to put a hold on the RGGI regulations indefinitely, which really I think speaks volumes to the argument that we've been making over the past 2.5 years that the governor cannot do this by executive order, that it's simply unconstitutional to create a new tax on industry.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing to me is that it's being approached from two different angles. Number one, is it a benefit and environmentally and economically is a part of that? But number two, in terms of the way that Pennsylvania operates and the ability to shut out one form of government over another, one branch of the government over the other, doesn't seem right to us. And because, as Senator Pittman often says, we're co-equal branches.
Right.
So the idea that someone can impose a tax from one branch without consultation with the other doesn't seem right.
It isn't right. That's the argument that we've been making, that the governor simply does not have this power. The climate change arguments aside, Reggie aside, no matter what it is, the governor doesn't have the power to do this, as is written in the Constitution. And that's part of the argument that we've been making, that this should have been vetted through the General Assembly. We should have had a vote on the House floor, on the Senate floor, before anything like this was even considered. And it's not been done that way. And I think that's where the court landed earlier this week.
Senator Pittman's comments on the floor of the Senate the other day before the override vote, I'm sure you were very, very interested in what he had to say. And he had some interesting things to say about the effect and the auction prices and how they have really escalated the cost of all of this. But I thought that one of the more interesting things he had to say had to do with the whole idea that a government can simply impose, and he didn't put it this way, but I will, and have long-ranging effects long after an administration is done and has been replaced by a whole other administration. But the long-ranging effects are something that just aren't reversible.
They aren't. If the governor's trying to leave a legacy, it's going to be a legacy that's bad for Pennsylvania. And again, that's what we've been saying all along, is this they promise the Reggie funds will create all these new jobs and everything along those lines with these other energy sources and help communities like ours, but it's simply not going to happen because what Reggie is going to do is shut down our fossil fuel industries, shut down our manufacturing, and that's going to be decades to overcome if that would occur. 129 jobs just at the Homer City generating plant, but talk about all the ancillary jobs, the truck drivers, the coal miners, everyone that benefits from the property taxes that they pay, the entire community, the entire county, and really all of Pennsylvania would suffer if Reggie went forward. Now, and you mentioned, the fact that it will or will it not have an impact on the environment. As was evidenced in the Senate hearing last week with the Independent Fiscal Office, our numbers are already parallel, not exactly, but very close to the Reggie states as it is now. And I think we mentioned that on Friday when we spoke. So we're already reaching those climate goals. Our industries have pumped billions of dollars into trying to make their products more clean. And I think that's where we need to go. Let's not wipe them out because, when you really get down to it, this is an attack on a specific industry. It's an attack on the fossil fuel industry. It's really not about climate change. It's about getting them out of business. And I really think that's the heart of it, and we can't allow that to happen. It really drives me crazy when they talk about all these things that could possibly happen when the reality is it would shut down this industry. It would put our energy production in jeopardy, and I think that's a dangerous path to go down.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me to watch the energy arguments going on. Here we are sitting on probably in Pennsylvania the biggest natural gas haul that there is in the entire nation.
Yes.
And it just seems like we're saying, well, let's forget about all of that. And let's forget about developing these things so that they can get even cleaner.
Right.
and just move on to something else when that technology isn't even in place yet.
Right, and that's why I proposed amending my bill to allocate $250 million into doing that type of research, to be mutually inclusive. You know, we can address the environmental concerns without putting our energy production in jeopardy. And I think that's really the path that we need to go down. There are ways to compromise on these things without really jeopardizing the industry, and also helping people, feel confident that we're doing what we can for the environment.
Yeah, okay. I wanted to ask you about this because this came up last week. And this, I'm springing this on you.
Okay.
So if you don't have a ready answer, I'll understand. PIAA Director, Mr. Lombardi.
Yes.
Last week, talking about the private schools versus the public schools, and the way that the state in basketball, for instance, this year there were 12 state championships. 10 of them were private schools.
Yes.
6 of them were from Philadelphia.
Yes.
And the long ongoing argument about public schools and private schools and whether they should be competing in the same. Should there be a separate championship bracket for the private schools and the publics? His claim was that PIAA will never do that because there's always the threat of a lawsuit against them, and the only way it could ever happen is if the state General Assembly steps in and forces it to.
Sure.
Do you see that happening?
I'm not sure, Todd. To be straightforward, I'm trying to gather some research on that, reaching out to some of the people that are involved in high school sports. Jody Rainey, for example, I'm having a conversation with Jody. I think that the bottom line is that it needs to be fair. If one school is able to draft and recruit when another can't, that's not fair. So I think really when it gets down to it, it needs to be a level playing field, so to speak. But it really, and I think that we need to take a closer look at this from a legislative perspective. What would that mean? How would that be enacted? But I think it's something that does need to be addressed because you're seeing those inequities, and I think that's really not fair to the public schools that simply have to pull from the population that they have, and they can't pick and choose students from other areas to come in and play for their teams.
Yeah, I think they call them boundary schools versus non-boundary schools is the way they're doing it now.
Right.
Non-boundary means your guys can come from overseas. They can come from anywhere.
Yes,
so,
right.
So it just happens that 2 7-foot kids from the same community in some town in some other state shows up here at one of our private schools. All right, so I want to get away from that and on to something that you probably are more prepared to talk about, and that is the event at IUP at which you were earlier this morning.
Yes.
And you're going back because one of the state secretaries is coming in, right?
Yeah, Secretary Redding is coming in. Secretary Russell Redding is coming into the Conservation District here at 10 to talk about, unfortunately, the spread of the spotted lanternfly. We now have infestations, I guess is the word for it, in the southern part of Indiana County. So he's going to give us an update on that. The spotted lanternfly is very destructive. They're everywhere. When I go to Harrisburg in the spring and summer, they are literally all over the sidewalks. It's hard to avoid stepping on them. So I think that unfortunately the spread isn't inevitable, but we do have to do all that we can to control that. And then, as you said, I was over earlier this morning at the KCAC. It's IUP Day or IRMC Day at IUP. Talking about the partnerships that could be created, that are being created. There's so much opportunity with the university and the hospital being so close together, and I think these collaborations are really beneficial to the future of not only Indiana County, but the university, the hospital, and all of Western Pennsylvania, particularly from the needs that we have in the medical fields right now.
Yeah, absolutely, and that should be a great partnership, and
yes,
it already has been and will continue to be. When you look at the big issues that affect us in Harrisburg, that come down to the local level, because every issue is a local issue. What to you are the ones that stand out for Pennsylvania right at this moment? What are the things that we have to get a better handle on?
Well, I really think the mental health issues have grown so quickly and so widespread that we have to do something more related to mental health. And I've been working on that, as you know, with several pieces of legislation, and that ties in, again, to drug addiction. We are seeing overdoses, numbers that we've never seen before, and that's really frightening, particularly related to fentanyl. I have the fentanyl test strip bill that is going to run in committee in May, so hopefully we can get that to a floor vote, because I do believe that piece of legislation will directly save lives. But we need to allocate more funding towards mental health, particularly in our schools. I think that's very important. The ratio of school psychologists and psychiatrists to students is not where it needs to be, and we're seeing a lot of that. I think a lot of your violence that you see in schools and in our communities really is related to mental health issues. People are very, very stressed right now. You come out of a pandemic. You have the horrors of what's happening in the Ukraine. Financial burdens on families now with this record inflation that we're having, and it compounds, and it really pushes people to their limits. So we need to be prepared for that, and we need to give people the resources they need. The budget's coming up, obviously. We're going to spend the entire month of June dealing with that, and we just finished up our budget hearing, so we have got a lot of work to do there. The list goes on, Todd. We're going to have a very busy week. We're back in session on Monday. I know the Senate was in this week, and then we'll go full throttle into the budget season.
Yeah, well, budget talks, they do quiet down. They leave the public square after the hearings,
Right.
and then they sort of fester a little bit, but there's a lot of work going on.
Well, yeah, they do, and that's where the real work comes in, is to try and digest what the various secretaries have said and their staff. What are their budget proposals? How did they justify that? Did they not justify that spending request? And then boil that all down to what we hope will be a balanced budget.
Yeah. So all of that work goes on.
Right.
You're going from here back over to the KCAC?
Yes, I am.
And you have a couple of public open houses.
Yeah, I have several town halls coming up. Tuesday, April 19th at the Armagh East Wheatfield Fire Department. Thursday, April 21st at Clymer Volunteer Fire Department, and Thursday, May 5th at Cherry Hill. If you want to register for those, just go to my website, repstruzzi.com.
He is State Representative Jim Struzzi. Thanks so much.